Here we are in the first day of our new semester, week 21, day 1. Obviously, you don't need to do the entry task, but it was here to introduce our thermal energy unit. In this upcoming spring, we are going to have 3 units that we're going to hit on and possibly even have a little bit of extension at the end of the year, depending on how much time there is, what with 2-day-a-week learning versus 4 or 5-day-a-week hybrid learning. This semester, you can be expecting throughout the month of February to be learning a little bit more about thermal energy. And last week, you had an end-of-the-week task in which you were learning about infrared light, and that is related to thermal energy, heat energy, infrared light being something that allows us to see that. Next up, in the month of March, you're going to be learning about weather, and then probably by the time I take off to go and have my baby, you and your substitute will be learning about cells and body systems and how these things kind of operate. Before we launch into the rest of today's lesson, a couple of housekeeping items, not even housekeeping, but maybe even preparation for the new semester, thoughts. It is a new semester. It is an opportunity to reset. Skyward and Google Classroom are both cleaned out. So if you find that you had a lot of issues in semester 1, maybe stuff was getting in late, or maybe it was just missing and it stayed missing forever, this is a great opportunity to learn from some of those mistakes. And rather than resetting your brain and thinking, this is a great path, or this is a great opportunity, a free pass, I'm going to fall into those same habits that I had before, try to avoid that. Try to grow from your mistakes. Try to improve as a student from the issues that you had and see if you can do them better. Now, you're viewing this because you're already in a new Google Classroom, so you don't need the link for it. If you were not in class, I have shared this link with you. But just a reminder that those Google Classroom items I have now archived, and you can go and look at your semester 1 work in the archived class section of your Google Classroom. If you click those, I think it's 3 bars up in the top left-hand corner. So luckily, that's still stuff we have some access to. Today's lesson, though, melting ice. Now, this is something that on the surface is kind of a no-duh. You take ice out of the freezer and it melts. But as we come to understand more about thermal energy, we're going to try and figure out why that happens. And even though it's very easy to write this off and say, melting ice, that sounds about as fun as watching grass grow, it is something that we can take a lot from if we explore it with an analytical eye, if we're trying to pay close attention. And that's what we're doing, noticing. Think in your own head for a little bit. What does that mean? What does it mean to notice? Noticing is when we see details or we hear them. We can use our senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, usually not in science, or feeling things, to try and understand them better. And we use these things that we notice to try and ask questions, to wonder and to explore and try and deepen our thinking about how the world around us works. So at this time, why don't you do 2 things? If you have access, please go and grab an ice cube. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can be from an automatic maker. It can be from an ice cube tray. Even if you have a little bit of built-up frost inside your freezer, that's okay. It's giving you something to watch and observe. And also some sort of container, a bowl, a cup, a mug. It doesn't really matter what you press it in as long as it's something that will keep it from leaking. And once you have those, go and open up this document, Melting Ice, in week 21, day 1, and this is where you're going to begin doing your work. I'm going to set out some of my own, but go ahead, pause the video, and when you come back, you will have me in the process of setting mine up, and you can do the same. So for ours, you only need 1 ice cube, but I'm going to set out a couple of different ones just for funsies. It's actually the same type of ice cube, just a big chunk and a little chunk. And as we are watching this, of course, this is going to be very, very dull if you're watching it on my camera. I'm not going to have you do this for a full half hour. But if you were doing this live, I would encourage you to just every 2 or 3 minutes, just stop and look. Every 5 minutes, take a look back, write down a few new observations. If you do not have access, then what I'm going to do is I am also going to include a link in this video in YouTube, and that will take you to another quick 2-minute rapid fire sped up video of ice melting, and that one you can stop every 15 seconds or every 30 seconds to watch that as well. Again, if you're watching this right now, open this up in YouTube, and you should see a link in the description below. Wow, I sound like a professional YouTuber. No, I don't. Anyway, so you should have this document open. What sort of things do we notice, and what sort of things do we wonder? Again, watch this on your own, do your own little investigation. You're going to be able to take it a lot further, but perhaps seeing some classmates' ideas might help you out. Some things that classes noticed or even drew from their own background knowledge are that ice tends to melt at about 32. It melts and freezes at that barrier. As the ice was sitting out, it kind of developed this puddle that allowed it to slide around. That when you touched, when it turns into water, that it will turn into water the longer it sits out, that it starts to move more when this happens. Some students were touching the ice with their hands, noticed that heat from their hand caused it to melt more. They think their hand or the sun might even be responsible for this. So why does it stop being ice? Why does it turn from a solid to a liquid? How is friction related to this, and when it has that slip and slide sort of action going on underneath? A lot of other thoughts and ideas are going on, and a lot of great wonderings about this. Students wondering about the size of the ice cube, especially when I had this larger one and the smaller one. They started to notice, oh wow, that smaller one's melting really fast, that bigger one's melting very slowly. A lot of great opportunities on this. But ultimately, what we're going to arrive at is you with probably no less than 5 observations and probably no less than 3 or 4 questions, hopefully more than that. But this being my first run through in first period was one of the more basic ones, and they got more and more detail throughout the day. And you're capable of doing this nice in detail as well. Whenever you are done, though, take a moment to look at some of the questions. Again, in class, we discussed these in person, but how quickly does your ice melt? How big was it? What sort of container is it sitting on? What sort of environmental conditions did you notice? Was there a light on? Was it dark? Was the temperature warm, medium, cold? Is it warmer or colder than it is outside? Was there a flow of air? And then taking our thinking deeper, what do you think is causing this to melt? Are there other ways we can make ice melt besides setting them out on a counter? How do you think this is happening? Is the ice losing its heat? Sorry, is it gaining its heat, or is it losing its cold? Which is happening to make it warm up? And eventually, what would happen if we left it out for a day, for a week, for a year? That is the basic essence of this. For the majority of classes, this second slide was excused. First, second, fifth, sixth, and seventh period were all excused. Fourth period, we had a little bit of extra time, so we did work on this slide here, trying to explain what we think is causing this to happen, but that's okay. For your Wednesday check-in, this is what our question was, to still make sure we had that opportunity to apply our thinking. Again, wherever you are in the video, if you have done your full 30 minutes of experiment, checking it at 5-minute intervals, awesome. If instead you're waiting for me to stop talking before you start that, great. You can go ahead and stop here. Or if you are that individual who does not have access to ice, and obviously I'm not going to sit here and leave this video running for 30 minutes, though actually even only after just a couple of minutes we can see that there is definitely some ice turning into water right here, right underneath this little fella. And it's really not happening very much on this one. Well, there's a little bit, but it's not as obvious. I see water pooling up around the edges. For those of you that do not have access to ice, again, take a look at that link in the description below and see if you can open that up and watch that 2-minute time lapse. Again, this is the same one that's posted in your Wednesday check-in. All right, thoughts and questions, please reach out to me. As I emphasized at the beginning, this is a beginning of a new semester, an opportunity to reset. So please take that opportunity seriously and use it wisely. I will see you again on day 1 of week 22 because I am at a training again on Thursday and Friday of this week on February 4th and 5th, week 21, day 2. So get that assignment done, but come back in ready to rock in the live class again next week. Have a wonderful rest of your day, your week, your year, wherever we find you. I'm here if you need me.